Um, when you buy a house, you generally expect the foundation to just, well, stay perfectly still.
Right. That's kind of the bare minimum expectation.
Exactly. You move your stuff in, you paint the walls, you arrange the furniture, but you fundamentally assume the ground underneath is solid, predictable rock.
You don't expect the floorboards to just give out.
No, you don't. But if you look at the video game industry right now, specifically what is happening over at Xbox, it feels like we're sitting on the couch while the construction crew is actively ripping up the floorboards and rearranging the walls around us.
It really does. It's a massive restructuring of a digital ecosystem.
Yeah, the very foundation of how we access, how we play and how we pay for our games is shifting in real time.
We are essentially watching one of the biggest entertainment companies in the world actively rewrite their own rulebook.
Completely.
And the ripple effects, they're going to hit every single person who plays video games.
Which is exactly what we are decoding for you in today's deep dive. We've got a really fascinating stack of sources detailing this, well, they call it a weird start to spring for Xbox.
Very weird.
Yeah. So our mission today is twofold. First, we're going to figure out what this corporate identity crisis actually means for your wallet and your free time.
And second, to really understand why this ecosystem is surviving this earthquake, we're going to examine 3 radically different titles that just dropped onto their subscription platform.
Right, because context matters here. We aren't just talking about a small catalog of games anymore.
No, definitely not.
We're looking at a platform that now boasts over 900 titles.
That scale is just staggering, over 900 games.
It's wild.
And we've already seen some heavy hitters setting the stage recently. Titles like Hades 2 and Tiny Bookshop dropped back in April.
Oh yeah, both incredible.
Right, and they really paved the way for the sheer variety of this month's editions.
But before we can look at the art, we have to look at the business funding it.
The foundation.
Exactly. The source material outlines a string of rapid-fire corporate changes that, honestly, they almost feel contradictory.
They really do.
Okay, let's unpack this. Microsoft lowered the Game Pass subscription price, which, on its face, sounds great for players.
Sure, cheaper is always better for the consumer.
But in the very same breath, they announced that future Call of Duty titles will not be day-and-date releases on the service.
Which is massive.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't track industry jargon, day and date basically means the game is available on the subscription service the exact same day you can buy it in a retail store.
Which is a huge pivot for them. For years, the entire rallying cry of Game Pass, the main reason people signed up, was that massive first-party blockbusters arrive on day one.
Right, you pay your monthly fee, you get the biggest games instantly.
Exactly.
But it goes further than just pricing. The entire Microsoft gaming department has been officially rebranded to simply Xbox.
A total name shift.
Yeah. And we also have CEO Asha Sharma actively hinting that they are, quote, reassessing their entire approach to exclusive games.
That's the part that really shakes things up.
Oh, it gets crazier. We are already seeing the results of that reassessment in the wild. Gears of War Reloaded is already out on the PlayStation 5.
On a Sony cons.
The PlayStation. Meanwhile, the status of the highly anticipated Gears of War E-Day is strictly listed as TBD.
Just completely up in the air.
So I have to push back here because I'm genuinely struggling to understand the logic.
Fair enough.
If Xbox isn't putting the biggest game in the world, Call of Duty, on Game Pass on day one, aren't they abandoning the ultimate value promise that built the service?
It definitely looks like that on paper.
And putting Gears of War on a Sony console, aren't they just handing their biggest rival an easy win?
Well, it looks like a surrender if you view it through the old rules of the console wars. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, Xbox is actually abandoning the old rules entirely.
Okay. How so?
They are completely redefining what value means. Shipping a flagship franchise like Gears of War to the PlayStation 5 while simultaneously rebranding the whole department to just Xbox, it signals a monumental shift from hardware loyalty to software ubiquity.
Software ubiquity.
Right.
So they don't care what plastic box is sitting underneath your television as long as you are playing their software.
Precisely. To understand why they are doing this, we really have to look at how the industry used to make money.
Oh, keep me back.
For decades, the model was a razor and blade strategy. Microsoft or Sony will happily sell you the physical console, the Razor, at a financial loss.
Because they make it up later.
Exactly. They know they're going to make all that money back, and then some when you buy their exclusive games, the Blades. You buy an Xbox specifically to play Halo or Gears of War.
Okay, so what broke that model? Why doesn't that work anymore?
Basically, the math broke. The economics of building a massive AAA game, these huge blockbuster titles, have just ballooned to an absurd degree.
How much are we talking?
We are talking about 5-year development cycles, hundreds of employees, and budgets soaring well past $200 million.
Wow, $200 million.
Yeah. And when a game costs that much to make, confining it to a single piece of hardware or giving it away for a flat monthly subscription fee on day one is simply no longer mathematically viable. You just cannot make your money back.
Ah, I see. So by lowering the entry price of Game Pass, but holding back a massive seller like Call of Duty, they are, casting a wider net?
Exactly. They're casting a wider net for casual subscribers while still forcing the hardcore fans to actually purchase the $70 blockbuster.
That makes a lot of sense.
They are transitioning from being a walled garden destination where you have to buy a specific machine to visit to becoming an underlying infrastructure that's just everywhere.
Like a streaming network crossing enemy lines?
Yes. They want Xbox to be a service you access on your PC, your phone, and yes, even your PlayStation.
But, if Xbox is tearing down its walled garden and refusing to rely solely on massive $300 million blockbusters to drive subscriptions, what actually keeps players paying that monthly fee?
The library itself.
Right. They have to rely on games that take creative risks those massive blockbusters never could. Which brings us perfectly to the actual art on the platform.
The games themselves.
Yeah. If you have a massive library, you need massive variety. So let's look at a game that takes us to the absolute furthest reaches of space.
A completely different kind of risk-taking for the platform.
The game is called Aphelion, and it's the latest release from the developer Don't Nod.
Oh, they do great work.
They really do. They're a studio noted in our sources for dabbling in a little bit of everything, but they usually focus heavily on narrative.
Right, very story-driven.
Exactly. And this time, they are delivering a space adventure following 2 astronauts who also happen to be former lovers.
That's a tense setup.
Super tense. They are sent on a highly critical mission to a newly discovered planet called Persephone to investigate if it's suitable for human life.
And naturally, because this is a video game, things immediately go awry.
Oh, of course. It wouldn't be much of a narrative if they just landed, took some soil samples, and had a nice, quiet, tension-free dinner, right?
Definitely not.
So, true to form, the mission totally falls apart. It turns this grand scientific expedition into a desperate survival situation across a hostile alien world.
High stakes.
Very high.
Mm-hmm.
But, more importantly, it becomes a desperate search for each other. Now, the reviewer in our source material noted something fascinating about the mechanics of the game.
What did they say?
They mentioned that the actual gameplay wasn't quite as invigorating as the emotional journeys of the characters.
Interesting.
Yeah, but they followed it up with this quote: Aphelion's storytelling is as top-notch as you'd expect from a Don't Nod game.
Which is incredibly high praise given their pedigree for complex narratives. But, it raises a really interesting design question about how games balance interaction with storytelling.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting, because reading about this, I was trying to figure out how a game succeeds if the physical act of playing it isn't the main draw.
Right, if the gameplay takes a back seat.
Exactly. And it struck me, it's like riding a slow, clunky elevator with your ex.
Oh, wow, that sounds terrible.
Right. The physical mechanics of getting from point A to point B are boring, maybe even frustrating. But that enclosed space, that lack of distraction, actively forces you to confront the interpersonal tension.
That's a great analogy.
So mechanically speaking, how does a game get away with that?
It gets away with it through brilliant narrative design. What Don't Nod is doing here is utilizing the hostile environment to reflect the internal states of the characters.
Okay, tell me more.
By isolating 2 ex-lovers on Persephone, the external stakes, meaning their raw physical survival and the monumental pressure of finding a new habitat for humanity act as a high-intensity pressure cooker for their internal stakes.
Which is their fractured relationship.
Exactly.
Because there's literally nowhere else to go. You can't just scroll on your phone or leave an awkward conversation.
Exactly. And this is where the less invigorating gameplay actually serves a purpose.
How so?
When the gameplay is slower or less kinetic, say, You are methodically trudging across a frozen landscape to fix a radio tower rather than sprinting and shooting aliens. It forces your brain to sit with those emotional stakes.
You aren't distracted.
Right. You aren't distracted by managing complex combat combos or dodging explosions. Your mental bandwidth is entirely focused on the heavy, unresolved tension between these two people in your headset.
Wow.
The vast, empty hostility of the planet Persephone physically amplifies the emotional distance between them.
I honestly hadn't thought about it like that. The mechanics aren't the point.
No, they aren't.
The mechanics are just the slow elevator forcing you to feel the weight of their shared history. But I have to imagine that's a tough sell for a standalone $70 purchase.
It is a very tough sell, which is why a game like Aphelion thrives in a subscription ecosystem.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. A player might hesitate to drop $70 on an experimental narrative game where the gameplay takes a back seat, but within Game Pass, that financial barrier to entry vanishes.
You just download it and try it.
Exactly. You can jump in, experience this profound, top-notch storytelling, and take a creative risk you might never have taken otherwise.
But, you can't live in that high-stakes emotional pressure cooker forever.
No, you burn out.
Totally. At some point, dealing with the heavy, heartbreaking void of space and your ex-partner's trauma just gets exhausting. Game Pass needs a counterbalance for when your real-life cognitive load is already maxed out.
You need a break.
Right. Sometimes you don't want to save humanity. You just want to save a Tuesday afternoon.
The ecosystem requires a palate cleanser.
Exactly. So enter our second game, Inconveni. We are pivoting from cosmic survival to a hyper-local, incredibly grounded experience.
A total 180.
Yeah. In this game, you play as a clerk running a small-town convenience store. The source explicitly states that this is not a grand adventure.
No saving the world here.
Zero saving the world. There are no aliens, no impending doom. The focus is entirely on life's everyday connections and moments.
Just normal life.
Yeah, your primary gameplay loop consists of literal day-to-day chores. You are stocking shelves, you are organizing snacks, you are ringing up customers.
It sounds so simple.
It is. But those tasks are broken up by branching conversations with the store's regulars. And as you chat with them, you start to learn their personal secrets and, by extension, the secrets of the small town itself.
What's fascinating here is that it is the cozy game genre distilled down to its absolute purest essence.
It really is. But I have to ask you to explain the psychology behind this, because on paper, it sounds absurd.
It does sound a bit like doing work for fun.
Right. Why do we do this? We log off from our demanding, real-world jobs where we have bosses and deadlines and a mountain of emails, only to sit down on the couch, pick up a controller, and eagerly perform mundane retail chores like stocking digital shelves.
It's a paradox.
How does that relax us?
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of control and cognitive load. In our real lives, our jobs and our responsibilities are often chaotic, unpredictable, and entirely outside of our direct control.
Always.
The stakes feel constantly high, and your brain is constantly processing new, stressful information.
Right. The real-world inbox is never empty.
Never. But in a digital environment like Inconveni, the parameters are rigidly defined and entirely safe.
Okay.
The low-stakes rhythm of stocking a shelf, aligning the candy bars, ringing up a customer, it creates a highly structured, predictable environment. Performing these simple, repetitive tasks actually induces a mild flow state.
So it actually physically calms you down.
It does. It lowers your heart rate because your brain knows exactly what is expected of it, and it knows exactly how to succeed.
So the chore isn't actually a chore. It's a grounding mechanism. It's giving your brain a safe, predictable task to chew on so it stops worrying about the real world.
Exactly. And this is where the game design is so clever. Because your cognitive load is significantly reduced by these simple, repetitive tasks, you are actually much more receptive to the narrative delivery.
Ah, I see.
When a regular customer walks in and you trigger a branching dialogue tree, discovering a small town secret feels deeply rewarding and intimate.
Because you have the mental space for it.
Right. The contrast between the quiet, predictable hum of the convenience store refrigerators and the sudden, warm revelation of a neighbor's hidden life creates a very specific, potent type of engagement. It's not about adrenaline. It's about connection.
It's the digital equivalent of people watching at a cafe.
That's a perfect way to put it.
You get to gently interact with a contained ecosystem without any of the anxiety of real-world socialization. It really shows off the width of that 900-game catalog, going from the vastness of Aphelion to the intimate glow of Inconveni.
But there is a third pillar to this library, and to human psychology, isn't there? We have the emotional depth, we have the cozy structure, but sometimes you don't want a story at all.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes you just need total kinetic chaos.
Just pure fun.
Yes. So from the emotional weight of space and the structured, meditative routine of retail, we transition to the total absence of structure. Our third game is pure, unadulterated, goofy joy. It is literally just called Sledding Game.
A title that aggressively sets expectations.
Exactly what it says on the tin. According to the source, Sledding Game is about two things and two things only: sledding and hanging out with your buds.
I love that.
The easiest way to describe it is by comparing it to the popular game Peak. But imagine Peak, and instead of carefully and gruelingly climbing up a mountain, you were just launching yourself down one with hilarious, wildly unpredictable ragdoll physics.
Ah, ragdoll physics, the great equalizer of video game mechanics.
The best.
There is something fundamentally universally funny about a physics engine going completely off the rails as a digital body tumbles down a hill.
It never stops being funny. And the game also throws in several mini-games, things like snowball fights and a game mode where you just build snowmen with your friends.
That sounds incredible.
It really does. Now, the source notes that the game is currently in early access, but it already comes packed with a massive amount of content. We're talking a ton of different sleds, unlockable playable characters, cosmetics, you name it.
Right.
But hold on. I need some clarity here. Early access used to be a dirty word in the gaming community.
It really did.
It used to mean, we ran out of money, please buy our broken tech demo. Why is a game being in early access suddenly presented as a positive feature?
It's a great question because the phenomenon has completely evolved. Launching in an early access or work-in-progress state is no longer a desperate cash grab.
Okay.
It is a highly effective modern development strategy, especially for physics-based multiplayer games like Sledding Game.
How so? Like, what does the developer get out of releasing an unfinished game?
They get immediate real-world data on how players actually interact with their sandbox. With a physics game, you can't predict what millions of players will do.
That's true.
Releasing it early allows the developers to see what the community finds funny. Which sled mechanics feel the most satisfying? Is the gravity too floaty? They can patch and adjust the ragdoll effects based on real-time community feedback.
Oh, so they tweak the fun in real time.
Exactly. And because the core gameplay loop, hanging out with friends and laughing at digital bodies crashing into trees, is instantly fun, players don't mind that the game isn't officially finished.
So what does this all mean for the players?
It means they essentially become co-developers. And because the game already provides a ton of content, like the cosmetics and characters mentioned in the source, it delivers massive value from day one, even while it's still being built.
And again, if we look at this through the lens of a subscription model, it makes total sense.
It's the perfect fit.
Getting your friends to play a new multiplayer game used to require a massive group text where everyone debated if the game was worth spending $20 on.
Oh, yeah. Half the group wouldn't buy it, and the plan would die.
Every time. But if everyone already has Game Pass, that friction vanishes. You just hit download, jump into a lobby, and immediately start throwing snowballs at each other.
It completely removes the financial friction from social gaming, which honestly circles us all the way back to the core strategy Xbox is implementing with these corporate shifts.
Let's synthesize this whole journey we've just been on. We started by looking at a corporate foundation that is radically shifting. Xbox is fundamentally altering its DNA.
Massive changes.
They are lowering subscription prices to cast a wider net. They're moving away from relying entirely on those massive day-one Call of Duty drops to drive hardware sales. And they are sharing their most fiercely guarded, iconic franchises, like Gears of War, with PlayStation.
Which is unprecedented.
Totally. They are transforming from a console manufacturer into a ubiquitous software service.
It is a calculated, necessary transition driven by the sheer economic realities of modern game development. The walls of the hardware garden
It is. When you finally sit down tonight, what is your brain actually asking for? Are you looking to be challenged by a deep, emotional narrative? Do you need the soothing comfort of a cozy, predictable routine to lower your heart rate? Or do you just need some mindless, hilarious fun with your friends tumbling down a snowy mountain?
Recognizing what you actually need from your interactive media, rather than just playing whatever is heavily marketed to you, is half the battle.
Yeah, it really is. And it leaves us with a lingering question, something a bit provocative for you to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Oh, let's hear it.
As Xbox stops relying on massive day-one exclusive blockbusters to sell their platform, does Game Pass actually become more essential by forcing us to discover these brilliant, weird, smaller games we might never have purchased on our own? Think about it. We'll catch you on the next one.